Yay! For our classy new start. Many thanks to Steve Bambera for adding the musical interest to the program. Welcome to the September Plants, Pests, and Pathogens program. We got getting clapping happening up there on the screen for Steve. Thanks. We got a great program going for you today. If you haven't already done your audio setup, please take a minute to do that so that you're going to hear and be able to contribute verbally to the program. Quick reminder that everything that you type in the chat box is visible to all of the moderators, so there is no privacy in Illuminate. In order to prevent feedback, we need everybody to leave your microphone off unless you are the person talking or you're asking a question. That microphone is in the bottom left corner of your screen in the audio box. It's a picture of a microphone. If it's yellow, it's turned on. So please leave it grayed out unless you're actually talking. We are recording this presentation so that it'll be available online for those who missed it or those who may want to come back to it. And if you're an agent and you want credit for continuing education, there's the website address for signing up on LMS. Okay. This is the website for Plants, Pests, and Pathogens. It's where you can go to see past presentations, get handouts from past presentations, see the agenda for upcoming presentations, get tips on how to use Illuminate, and all sorts of other information that is related to this Plants, Pests, and Pathogens program. We have a tiny URL down here at the bottom so you don't have to keep track of a huge long one that's the actual address. Here's our program for today. We're going to have, as always, 3 agents participating. Sean Banks, Taylor Williams, and Colleen Church from across the state will be providing input. Our featured speaker today is Debbie Roos, who's going to be talking about pollinators. And then we have our standard superstars for the end of the program, Dave Stephan on entomology and Mike Munster on plant pathology. Lee J. Hicks is our amazing Wonder Woman who straightens out all the challenges that come our way with doing the technology-based program like this. Lee J., thank you so much for being here and for straightening us out on our address for today and getting all the programs up. You want to take a minute to provide some tips and strategies?
Sure. Thanks, Lacey. Good morning, everyone. This is Lee J. Just to remind you, if you have a question, you can definitely type it in the chat box. As people say URLs and different websites that are of interest to you, I'll try my best to get them into the chat box so that you can click on them and follow them yourself. If you have a question that you want to ask verbally, then you can click on the hand with the up green arrow, and that'll raise your hand. So if you have a question, just raise your hand, and then you can ask it. And if you have any questions or technical difficulties, type them in the chat box, and I'll do my best to sort it all out. Take it away, Lise.
Thanks, Lee J. So first up this morning is Sean Banks. Sean is the horticulture agent in Johnston County, and I'm going to turn it straight over to you, Sean.
Great, thanks. Today I wanted to talk a little bit about fire ants, because fire ants seem to be a big problem in this part of the state. Can you still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. How many of y'all that are participating out there have problems with fire ants in your county? If you can, just give me a green check. Looks like pretty close to about half of everybody has that same problem that we have. So fire ants have been a really big deal here. And the reason why I chose to talk about that is because now is really the time to control fire ants. I went to a fire ant conference down in Little Rock, Arkansas earlier this year, and they found that the best time to control fire ants is in the fall. They've already done most of their mating flights for the year. They're getting ready to store up food and prepare themselves for the wintertime. And so controlling them at this point right here, or this time right now, the fire ants should be a lot less of a problem next year. From our own experience, last year we put out fire ant baits here in Johnston County at the Ag Building, and we went from about 10 to 15 fire ant mounds per acre to about 1.5. So we're putting the baits out again this year to try and get those under control. A couple of websites that you might be interested in is the e-extension website that Lee J. Hicks just put up for me. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. On that website, there's a lot of different information on there. There's information or links to information on how to control fire ants in pastures, how to control fire ants near horse farms, as well as other websites that are valuable for people here in North Carolina. One of the things that's on that website is a link to a fire ant product selection tool. Steve Bambera put that together a few years ago and sent that out to some of the agents. He may have that available to those who don't have it and need a copy of it. You may want to ask him about that. But I found that that's been very helpful in helping select baits or drenches or other tools or other products that I've needed to recommend to people that they could use in their own yards. One thing that I did want to mention is a fire ant video that I helped Dr. Apperson produce a couple years ago. It's been really helpful for me in doing my fire ant workshops. It also won a National Communications Award for the Ag Agents Association. It's put together really well. Dr. Apperson did a really nice job getting everything put together, but it's really good about, thanks, appreciate that. It's really good as far as getting people the information that they need as far as how to avoid getting fire ants inside their house and prevent them from becoming a problem in their yards. And that website, I'm not sure if that one's already up there as well, but you can find a link to that on the North Carolina E-Extension Fire Ants website. Are there any questions? Okay, well that's all I had for today. Does that take up my 5 minutes?
Okay, thank you, Sean. Taylor Williams is our next guest speaker. Taylor is the horticulture agent in Moore County.
Hello, everybody. Can you hear me? Well, what I chose to talk about today is aminoparallid injury that you see in a number of different applications. Aminoparallids are a class of herbicides that are fairly new. We haven't really seen it for more than about 2 years. Dow Chemical has produced a class of herbicide compounds that are used primarily on pastures. Here's the issue, at least regarding landscapes and home gardens. These herbicides are particularly persistent, which is a good thing if you're applying it to a pasture and you have some stubborn weeds to control. But it's a particularly bad one when you're thinking about using the hay from that in an ornamental setting. Let me explain this. These herbicides persist in the hay, and so if you use the hay for mulch, you would end up with an herbicide injury. So that if you were using hay for a mulch in your garden, in your vegetable garden, you'd see something that would look like a typical auxin type herbicide injury, something like 2,4-D or dicamba injury, which is to say this, they're strappy leaves. And I'm hoping I can get that slide up there of the tulip poplar tree. Yeah, you can see that now. You can see this is a pasture where Forefront was applied to the pasture a year ago, and the damage that you see is occurring this spring from an application applied in 2009. And you can see that this injury has persisted. Now these are new trees planted in a pasture. We have a lot of course, in Moore County, a lot of horse owners, and they are quite vigilant about getting rid of weeds that are not that they don't want in their pastures. They're convinced that almost everything will kill a horse, and to a certain extent, a lot of things will. And Forefront is useful for controlling a lot of those things. Now, Forefront and Milestone, once the horse eats the hay and actually gets it inside, the gut, and it'll pass through in the manure and will persist there. We've had a number of organic gardeners and such that have applied manure and or hay to their gardens, and a year later they haven't been able to grow sensitive crops like tomatoes, green beans, lettuce, and the like. I've even seen some okra that has just completely died from this. It won't hurt corn, won't hurt members of the grass family, but it will hurt any ornamental trees. In this particular case, the applicator, who was a contractor, will have a very, very expensive, he'll have to pay to replace probably about 50 or 100 trees that were planted in this past year. It'll be a matter of many thousands of dollars for him to do this. So the issues are these. First of all, if a homeowner receives a load of manure, he should be careful that he probably tests that manure, because the owner of the source of the manure probably won't know where his hay has come from. In all likelihood, it may have been treated with Forefront or Milestone or other materials that contain these aminoparalids. And so there's a good publication on the NC Organic website that was prepared by Janine Davis and Joe Neal and others, that explains what you should do. And what you might want to consider doing is taking some of the manure, applying it into some sort of, mix it up into some sort of medium, and then put some beans or some lettuce plants or the like in that one, and compare it with a medium that has not been amended with manure, and see whether the plants where the manure is applied whether they die. It's called a bioassay, and it's pretty effective at telling you whether you have this aminoparalid injury. We've seen a number of this. We've probably had 3 or 4 dozen calls. So that's all I had. I wanted to talk about that because it is a troublesome herbicide that has shown up in the manure and even the compost, and certainly in the hay that's applied to landscapes and into home gardens.
Thanks, Taylor. Our next speaker is Colleen Church, who's the horticulture agent in Davie County.
Okay, thank you, Lucy. I hope everybody can hear me all right. Well, I chose to talk to you about our Master Gardener program today, and I just have a little map here to show you where Davie County is, if you all can see that. We're the 3rd county from the top there in the little pink area next to the green, just west of Forsyth County if you're heading down I-40. Our Master Gardener program began in '99 under Greg Hoover. I started here in '03 and then taught my first class in '04. We currently have 37 active volunteers, and I'm offering classes every other year, and I'm trying to get a class going for the upcoming 2011 class. And most of the things that we try to work on are beautification type projects, horticultural education, public outreach, fundraising, office assistance, and social type events. They'll have to let the volunteers have a little bit of fun. So this is one of the things we did last year. I'm just kind of going through the year last year. We did a spring garden information series, which the Master Gardeners, let's see, you guys are saying I'm hard to hear. Let me try and turn my mic up a little bit. I mean, does that help any of you guys? We had a spring garden information series that my Master Gardeners helped me teach. We offered it through 4 different locations in the county over 4 months, going from winter into spring, mostly focusing on vegetable gardening. And this is just a photo of one of our volunteers. Sorry, you guys are having so much problems with my mic here. This is my first moderator type experience with Illuminate. I'm trying to watch the chat. there. I tried turning the mic up a little bit more, so maybe that will fix it. But anyway, this is our meeting facility here that you see the guys teaching in. We offer a plant sale each year. It's their major fundraising effort. Some of our members are go to a local church here that has a little greenhouse. So this is some of our ladies propagating or setting some plants of some annuals and vegetables for the sale. And this is our actual spring plant sale that we hold each year. We've been doing this for several years now, and as I said, this is the group's primary fundraising effort. We just do kind of a sidewalk sale outside our building here. We get a lot of business from our other downtown merchants and county employees who are around here beside the courthouse in downtown Mothsville. So this has been very successful for our group. The United Way here offers an annual Day of Caring event where they compile a list of various community service type projects, and we always take a landscaping project. This doesn't look like we did much here, but this was at the local YMCA, and they wanted all of this iris and daylily and liriape that you see towards the front moved into that area. So we transplanted a lot of material there, and then our guys did some pretty heavy-duty pruning on some overgrown shrubbery. This is just a little thing we were invited to at a concrete company down in Lexington. They invited area master gardener groups to come out and have lunch and see some of their products. Business was kind of slow for them. But I thought some of them may be interested in seeing this that they called the Versa wall. There was actually holes in the top of those blocks that you could plant into. So I made a really nice little living wall there for the landscape. We try to take a spring and fall trip each year. So this was our spring trip that we took back this past spring. We kept this one local. This was some work that one of our volunteers has been doing at a nursing home. And then we visited some local farms on this trip. So this is a greenhouse hydroponic tomato producer that we have here at Dewdrop Farm. Our favorite things that I guess we do together are our youth activities that we normally do during the summer through the 4-H Summer Fun program. So we do a Junior Master Gardener Day Camp where we take 24th, 3rd through 5th graders. We also get some sponsorship from the local Farm Bureau, and the Master Gardeners provide some sponsorship for this as well. And then this is the second year now of our little mini camp that we do. We just do a 2-day little mini camp for 10 first and second graders. So that's been a lot of fun for us, just doing some of the same things we do in the bear camp, but kind of breaking them down, slowing them down a little bit. And that's our adorable little mini campers from this past year. And our adults getting to have a little bit of fun too. And that's all I have, except for just some little continuing stuff that we have going on for the remainder of the year there. So thanks.
Thanks, Colleen. Lots of inspirational ideas there. Our featured speaker this morning is Debbie Roos. Debbie's an extension agent in Chatham County, and she's going to be talking with us about pollinators.
My microphone keeps going off and on. Is that good?
Sounds great.
Okay. I would click it on and then it went off. Okay. Well, I'm really happy to be able to talk to y'all about pollinators today. Definitely seeing increased interest over the last couple of years. So Lucy asked me to talk about some of the work I've been doing with demonstration pollinator gardens. So that's what I'm going to do. Whoops, did I go the wrong way? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. This is my first time moderating. Apparently I clicked the wrong arrow. Lee J, can you help me get back to my, okay. I may have clicked the, there we go, thank you. Okay, so what
Debbie, you want to use the arrows that are in the top left corner of your thing? Okay.
I think I hit the last arrow, right? Okay. Sorry guys. Gotta bear with me. So what we're going to do is just talk a little bit of a kind of a general overview of pollinators, and then we're going to focus in on bees, and we'll explain why a little bit later, and then talk about the principles of planting a bee garden, and then I'll tell you a little bit about some of the work I've done here in Chatham County with demonstration gardens, and then we'll finish up by looking at some of the web resources that I've pulled together. So obviously, in most of our jobs, whether we're extension agents or master gardeners or just gardeners, we all recognize the importance of pollination. I know as extension agents, we often get questions from people, concerned about lack of pollinators or poor fruit set. So I think the public is becoming increasingly aware of the role that all types of pollinators play in our food supply, but also in our ecosystem. So over 80% of flowering plants need the help of some type of animal for pollination, and that pollination ensures that we're going to get good quality, well-sized fruit for us and for others who might enjoy them. So there's over 1,000 different plants that we enjoy for food and medicine and spices, beverages around the world that require some type of animal pollination. So we're just going to kind of do a quick little run through of a photo gallery of some of the primary pollinators out there. And these are all photos that are taken right here. So these are North Carolina pollinators examples. There's over 200,000 species. Most would be considered to be beneficial insects. Lots of different orders represented, from flies and beetles, butterflies, bees, wasps, and ants. So here we have a spicebush swallowtail on verbena and Polistes wasp on bronze fennel. Okay, I'm going to try to remember to check over on the chat in case anybody has questions. I'm assuming everybody can hear me okay. So here's one of my favorite bees, a little bumblebee on Joe Pye weed, or Eupatorium. Notice the long tongue. I love seeing the tongues out. Here's very common, what we're seeing a lot of around here, hummingbird moth on Vitex. This is not a native, of course, but a very important pollinator plant. Interestingly, I've noticed, I don't know if anyone else has, but in the past I've always seen these in flight, never at rest. And for some reason this year, I keep running across all these hummingbird moths at rest on flowers. So it's kind of nice because you can really see the clear wings up close. I've gotten several photos. I just thought that was an interesting little observation. I don't know why I've never noticed them at rest before. Must be tired this year. This is a swallowtail on Vernonia, or ironweed. Lots of different types of syrphid flies, also called hover flies or flower flies. They're often mistaken for bees or wasps. This is on a sassafras tree, one of my favorite trees, that blooms around here, and usually in March. Another syrphid fly. This was a lot of these photos were taken in my garden, by the way. This is right behind my beehives, and I'll never forget seeing this syrphid fly. I've never seen such a big one, and it's dwarfing that little sweat bee in the Tithonia flower. This is obviously a bee or wasp mimic, and of course the larvae of the syrphid flies are predaceous on aphids, so very important beneficial insect for the farmers out there. That are relying on a lot of the beneficials for their natural enemies. I've been seeing a lot of robber flies also this year. Another one of my favorites. They're just so super cool and such really wonderful aerial predators, even though they often catch my bees that I love, as this one has. This was taken in the pollinator garden in town, and he's often seen munching down on bees. But they're just really cool insects, I think. It's on Rudbeckia. So this is a honeybee with fully loaded pollen baskets approaching a Carolina silverbell. This was at the Botanical Garden. This is in March also. I think I missed one there. A hairstreak butterfly on goldenrod. And this is one of my favorites too. A lot of people don't really notice these critters. Ambush bugs, because you can see how well camouflaged they would be. This is on the native Monarda punctata, or spotted horsemint, and they obviously blend in very well. I think this one looks really cool and kind of prehistoric. Notice the front grabbing legs like a praying mantis, but they'll lay in wait, among the flowers and grab something that goes by. Anybody that works with cut flower growers or grows cut flowers will often see the soldier beetles hanging out on the flowers. So here's an example of that. They're also considered a beneficial, natural enemies. So a small percentage, we've looked at some of the arthropods, but a lot of the pollinators are also vertebrates. So that includes bats and hummingbirds and even small mammals such as mice. But by far, bees are considered to be the most important pollinators because with the exception of a couple of species of wasps, bees are the only ones that deliberately gather pollen to bring back to the nest. And they also practice flower constancy, which is basically on any single foraging trip, they'll tend to stick to the same flower. So obviously that means pollen would be wasted if the pollen is picked up and then delivered to the stigma of a flower of a different species. That's not going to result in fertilization, but so that's why like a butterfly would be flitting around between, for example, different species of flowers. And since bees stick to the same species, that usually results in better efficiency. So, whether you are a farmer or a gardener or just love to eat, obviously we all rely on bees for much of our food supply. And since we're focusing on bees, we'll be talking a little bit about both honeybees and our native bees. A lot of people are surprised. I know this group would not be, you guys would not be, but a lot of people don't really understand that honeybees are not native bees. So they're interested to learn that. There's been a lot. I'm really pleased, I guess you could say, to see that more and more research is being done on the role of native bees in crop pollination. Previously, it seemed that all the credit would be given to honeybees for our crop pollination. And so research is now showing that our native bees play a very important role, and this was contrary to kind of past belief that in intensively managed farms, honeybees were really the key pollinator. And research, especially by Rachel Winfrey up in the Northeast, is showing how important these native bees are to our crops, especially in the East. This study is focused on 4 different crops: watermelon, tomato, pepper, and muskmelon, on about 30 farms. That included both organic and conventional farms, and they found that over 54 species of native bees visited the crops and were actually more abundant than the honeybees. And that the research showed that they were quite adequate for full pollination of these crops. And the difference would be that on these eastern farms, the fields tend to be smaller. You got a high crop diversity. A lot of wood hedgerows, and just a diverse habitats in general characterize these farms, and that's all very beneficial to supporting native bee populations. Can y'all see my mouse when it's over the slide? I'm wondering. I have no idea. I should probably be more careful when I'm doing with it.
Debbie, the only time we'll see it as a pointer is if you select that magic wand that's on the left.
Because you know how I tend to wave my hands when I talk. I think I'm jiggling my mouse, so I'm glad you can't see that. So focusing a little more on why native bees are considered efficient pollinators. There's a number of reasons. For example, if you look at something like apples, only about 250 mason bees would be required to pollinate an acre of apples compared to a couple of hives of honeybees, and that could be anywhere from 30 to 60,000 honeybees or more. And the reasons for this are there's several. Many species of our native bees tend to be more active when it's cold and wet, when honeybees don't want to really leave the hive on when it's raining or even drizzling. Also, bumblebees and some of our other native bees practice what is called buzz pollination. And basically they grab the flower with their mandible and vibrate their flight muscles, and that dislodges pollen that's deeper in the flower, and just basically dislodges more pollen that's accessible. Also, some of our native bees specialize in one type of flower, for example, squash bees, and some of the bees even spend the night inside the flower, the male squash bee, for example, and this specialization results in larger fruit. Also, pollen that's gathered by native bees is often more accessible. Certainly other bees other than honeybees have pollen baskets, but when you think about pollen, that's, in a pollen basket, it's not, the whole point is that it's carried back to the nest, it's not dislodged, whereas a lot of our native bees, they carry the pollen in branched hairs on their body, and it's more likely to fall off and result in pollination as they're moving around. There's about 4,000 known species of bees that are native to the U.S., about 20,000 in the world, and there's 10 families of bees worldwide, and we have all but one of them here in the U.S. And the group is very diverse. This is something I'm on I guess a lifelong mission. I'm really excited about bees, and you can always be learning more about bees, and I'm always looking for ways to learn more about bees because they're such a diverse group, and there's so many of them. There's so much to learn, but you see a lot of different differences in size and color and whatnot. Here's just showing again some of the size differentiation. This is Monarda, a very tiny bee, and then over here we have a bumblebee on Scabiosa, again with that nice long tongue. Just kind of just a quick photo run through of some of our bees other than honeybees. This is the shaggy fuzzy-foot bee. It's certainly one of our important blueberry pollinators. This is on Rudbeckia, which is a prairie coneflower. Lucy, let's see. How am I doing on time? What time am I supposed to finish here? I think at
11.
Okay. So about 10. Okay, just checking. Okay, and here we have a carpenter bee on passion flower. So you can see all the pollen on the abdomen. This is a very attractive flower, I've noticed, to lots of bees. I mean, in the fall, you'll see just like 5 or 6 or more honeybees and carpenter bees fighting for space on one bloom. So this is the native passiflora. One of the many types of sweat bees or halictids on coneflower. So again, these photos are showing kind of the variety of flower shapes and sizes and structures. The composite flower, of course, there's actually hundreds of flowers in this type of flower. So the sweat bees can be very beautiful with metallic colors like green. Here's a honeybee. This is actually taken in November, so very late in the year. Again, foraging on aster with a full pollen baskets. Liatris, another honeybee shot. And again, this is another native flower. So this is a honeybee. A couple of bumblebees. Spring and summer, the Bactesia on the bottom left would be in the spring, March and April and May. And then again, notice the orange pollen from the gathering the pollen, and that's Monarda on the right. Okay, so those. Now we'll look at the difference kind of between our solitary bees and our social bees. So this may look like a social bee because you're seeing lots of nests here, but these are andrenid bees. This is actually taken in Raleigh. Steve Bambera knows this place well, and I think Dave Stefan, they both, I think, told me about this elementary school in Raleigh that I like to go visit, even though it raises suspicion when you see someone out there with a camera in a school. I've learned to check in. But anyway, it's fascinating. It's just apparently a very prime habitat for these andrenid bees on this very kind of loose turf. So you can see the females. Here's the female. Took me forever to find my pointer. I forget where it is. But anyway, on the bottom right, you can see her emerging from her nest. So they go out and provision the nest, and then of course that'll be closed up later.
Debbie, I'm going to interrupt you just a minute to show you where the pointer is.
Yeah, remind me.
Let's see, up right here.
Tools. Oh yeah, that's it. Okay.
So you click on that, and then you can come down to the bottom and choose what shape.
So anyway, that's the, can y'all see that now?
Barely. You might want to choose a different shape.
Okay. How about that? There we go. Is that working?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know if I have to unclick it now. Okay. Well, we'll just see. We'll go to the next one. Okay, so then some of our social bees, thanks Steph. It's great to get feedback, especially when you can't see people. So looking at our social bees, of course, we have our honeybees, and then bumblebees are another good example. And I don't know about you guys, but I think both are fascinating. I keep bees myself Actually, my beekeepers like to call me a bee haver because I'm pretty hands-off, but I accept that. So, but they seem to have done pretty good without me. But I think the nests are fascinating, especially bumblebee nests. I'm going to undo my clicker. So you can see, you know, the different little honey pots in here for the bumblebee nest. And they're very opportunistic. I mean, they're cavity nesters, so they'll nest in like old rodent burrows and whatnot. I think I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, so I won't go into that now. So we've kind of had a general overview of pollinators. So let's talk now about what we can do to protect and enhance our pollinator populations. I'm sure, you know, there is quite a bit of national media attention now on the decline of pollinators, and certainly, you know, honeybees and the problems with honeybees. So, you know, we all realize, I'm not sure how to get my pointer off. Okay, I'll just try to keep still. You know, that we've been talking about the connection to pollinators in our food supply, but obviously, as we all know, they're also very important just to our ecosystems and our landscapes, because, you know, all of our wildlife depends on fruit that is eaten and you know, in the woods, for example. This is a shot right here in Chatham County. We're seeing a lot of habitat. Hit escape to turn off pointer. Okay. We're seeing a lot of habitat changes here, you know, a lot of development. We're a bedroom community for Chapel Hill and Raleigh. Lucky us. So lots of habitat destruction and fragmentation. So that definitely results in the loss of habitat, both foraging and nesting habitat, and also egg-laying sites. So anything we can do would help. So a few steps to take in thinking about how you can help pollinators. First is to basically assess what you already have, and that would be both nesting sites and forage. Hopefully you already have some kind of base where you are, so that would be a good starting point to kind of do an evaluation of what you have. And then the next step would be, the next easiest step would be to adapt what you're already doing. There may be slight tweaks that you can do to your garden management or farm management, you know, to minimize the negative effects on bees. And that could be, you know, just trying to minimize the potential for pesticide poisoning, whether that's reduced pesticide use or, you know, using the softest pesticide available, or altering your spray schedule or spraying in the evening when, you know, when bees are not actively foraging. As far as in a garden, you know, garden or farm, minimizing tillage can certainly help in not disrupting ground nesting bees. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. You know, not necessarily going all the way to no-till, but when you can. I know, for example, in my garden, when I plant clover in the fall, I don't till it up anymore. Basically, I just mow it. I mow the turf as short as I can, and then I broadcast red clover seed, crimson clover seed, and then I spread a thin layer of compost on top. And I don't have to till it at all, and I always get a good stand of clover for my bees. Allowing crops to bolt, you know, people tend to think of that in a negative way, but that can actually provide great forage, especially overwintering forage of, you know, mustard family plants, for example, for bees. Anything you can do to stagger planting dates to extend your bloom period. You know, a lot of gardeners and farmers are already doing this, especially if you're growing for a market where you need a long harvest period. But also, when you've learned and evaluated and assessed your property for where you have native bee populations, basically just leaving those areas alone. You know, or when you've found forage plants that are important to bees, leave that area alone. You know, some people cut down very valuable plants that they think they don't really understand provide great resources for bees. So sometimes the best thing is to do nothing. Okay, so if you've done those other steps and you actually want to take an active role in looking at how to provide more habitat, so that can be done both by creating nesting sites and foraging habitat. About 70% of our bees, our native bees, nest in the ground, and the other ones would be, of course, wood nesters. I'm not going to focus on this talk just for lack of time on creating nesting sites. I've got a lot of resources on my website, and I'll try to remember to show you all those at the end, just because we can't cover everything. But that would include, again, just protecting the sites that are already there. I mean, I'm always walking around my property looking for native bee nests in the ground and then trying to avoid that area. And then you can also, either construct or purchase wood nesting blocks. There's all manner of artificial nests that you can create or buy for native bees that can be helpful. And also you can plant plants that provide nesting sites. And we'll talk a little bit about that. So for now, we're going to focus on creating forage for the bees. This is a shot of Monarda in the background with Agastache in the foreground, both really excellent bee forage plants. So the first thing you'd want to do if you're looking at planting, forage for your bees, whether it's at a garden scale or at a bigger scale, is first, again, kind of as I mentioned before, try to assess what you already have. So you obviously have plants in your area, whether they're in your own property, your own garden, or just in neighboring lots that do provide resources. So try to identify what's already there and then figure out when are the dearth periods when nothing is blooming. That's the easiest way to do it. So maybe you've got lots of flowering plants in the summer but nothing in the spring, and it's really important in the spring to have things blooming to build up, for example, Bumble Bee populations. When the queen emerges from hibernation, she needs plants to forage on to feed. So I'm still not able to really turn my pointer off, but I'm just trying to keep it off to the side. Okay, so once you identify when the dearth periods are, then you can start pinpointing what plants would be ideal to fit that window. So what you're aiming for in a bee garden or pollinator garden is really having at least 3 seasons of bloom from early spring to late fall, and then having those, of course, having that overlap. So you have no period, thanks Leanna, so you have no period when there's nothing blooming. That's definitely not good for the bees. So that's what you're aiming for. So as far as siting a garden, you want, obviously the ideal location would be in full sun. That's optimal nectar production. For some people, that's a challenge. I know we have a lot of people around here that have lots of woods, and there certainly are plenty of plants that can deal with part shade. There's even, certainly some bee plants that can deal with full shade, but they're just the most variety, of course, is going to be found in full sun. You want to create your habitat patches as large as you can. Now, bee gardens can be effective even in containers if you have small property. But what you want to try to do is at least aim for, if you're talking about a small plant at maturity, then you want to group them together so where it creates ideally a minimum of 4 feet across. That makes it more efficient for the bees to forage and also easier for them to find it. So in some cases, that 4 feet across, that's going to be one plant. I can think of things like Nepeta, the catmint. Okay, Taylor, I'll get to that. Thank you. And then, but other things like coneflower, you may need to group 3 or 4 together to create that 4 feet across. So just keep that in mind. Okay, so Taylor, let's see. Comment on the benefits of pollinator gardens to augmentation of beneficial. That's a great question. There's tremendous overlap. So basically, when you are planting a pollinator garden, you are also planting a beneficial insect habitat. I've seen, there's just so, and I'm going to talk a little bit later about the work David Orr is doing. I probably better speed up a little, but I see a tremendous number of beneficial insects in my garden, but there's quite a bit of overlap, very much overlap, in the flowers that provide resources for beneficial predators and that also work for bees. Okay, so here we go. Basically, research has shown that gardens that have 10 or more species of attractive plants attract the largest number of bees. So the message here is diversity. The reason I started doing these pollinator gardens is to really try to get people away from this same plant palette of hostas and daylilies and, oh my gosh, just mind-numbingly boring plants. It's like, come on people, there are some great plants out there. Let's branch out a little here. So you're looking to diversify. There's some really wonderful native plants. Okay, so you're looking for plants that provide both nectar and pollen, because that's the resources that bees need. Okay, so again, using mostly perennials, these tend to have the richer nectar sources and also just more stable forage for bees. Okay. Just a little sideline here, just some interesting things when you're talking about plants and what goes on with foraging. This is an example of nectar robbing and blueberries. So on the left you have your primary nectar thief would be the carpenter bee. And so basically that bee is too large to access the nectaries in the bottom of the bloom. So they just carve a slit in the corolla and just are able to access the nectaries there. The honeybee on the right in this photo is the secondary nectar thief, and they just stick their tongue in that corolla slit made by the carpenter bee. You would think this would be bad for pollination because they're certainly bypassing the stamens. But however, some research has shown that this can actually increase pollination because the nectar robbing by the carpenter bees actually attracts more honeybees to the blueberries. I know breeders are, the length of the corolla has an effect on how effective honeybees can be in pollination, because for a honeybee they are looking for a shorter corolla and a wider aperture. So different varieties of blueberries meet those needs. That's why native bees are also very important pollinators to blueberries. They're able to get better inside that bloom and help with the pollination. Okay, so again, more ways. Bees also harvest honeydew. We all know what honeydew is, the excretions from plant-sucking insects. That's also a source of nectar for them. Extrafloral nectaries, I just think it's a fascinating aspect of plants, physiology, biology. A lot of plants out there produce extrafloral nectaries. These are also very valuable for beneficial insects besides pollinators. And these can be found on all different parts of the plants. Here's some examples. Here's an ant feeding on elderberry, the nectar from elderberry nectaries, and then here's a passion flower leaf with the little extrafloral nectaries on the edges of the leaves, but lots of different plants produce these. Okay, when you're talking about plant selection, you want to emphasize local native plants, avoid invasive species, and that's because these native plants are the most readily, the bees are adapted to them. They also provide many other benefits to other wildlife. There certainly are some non-natives that provide good resources, and these, in my mind, are especially the herbs. I have a lot of those. But you want to choose plants with a diversity of flower, color, and shape. Okay, so let's talk about establishment. You can tell I'm speeding up a little bit here. Landscape and farmscape, two different scales. And I think this audience today is mostly interested in the landscape part. So I was very fortunate to I started doing my work in pollinator conservation several years ago. I just saw a need for a resource there. I work with beekeepers. I am a beekeeper. We didn't have any very comprehensive resources on bee plants for the state, and I thought that was the perfect marriage of my favorite hobbies, which are photography, gardening, and beekeeping. So I started putting together plant lists, plants that are adapted to the Piedmont of North Carolina, developing web resources with photographs, photographing plants blooming throughout the year. Still working on that resource. I got a little sidelined here in a good way because a Chatham citizen basically came to me and gave me some grant money to establish these pollinator habitats. So I've done 2 sites, and the third one's going to be planted next month. So here we go. Piedmont Biofuels is a plant here in Pittsboro, and it's got 2 farms on the property, so I built the garden there to support those farms. Probably the showcase garden is at Chatham Marketplace in Pittsboro. Chatham Marketplace is an independent co-op grocery store. They are very, what's the word? Their mission is to buy from local farms and support local farms. That's a big part of their mission. I have a long history of working with them on pollinator issues. We do National Pollinator Week celebration with them every year, and I knew that would be a really excellent place for a demonstration garden because of the traffic it gets. And this is what it looked like before. So you can see they had no landscape, 0. Well, you can count a smattering of hawthorn plants and Yopon hollies, and that was about it. So we planted the garden in December 2008. The garden is in its 2nd year now. So here are some current pictures. This is the trellis bed. So we built a cedar trellis to highlight some of the native vines. And then here's just another shot. This is a bike rack. That little apple in the foreground is actually a bicycle rack. The garden is maintained by volunteers. I'm probably the primary gardener there with my small group of very dedicated volunteers. It's a lot of fun. And so it's an excellent educational garden. We do lots of workshops out there. I do a monthly garden tour, and it's really been very effective. I have people tell me all the time that they've gone home and done it. They're supporting our local nursery, so that's been very, very exciting and gratifying. And it's just really added to the community. People really love, and the kids, I'm going to start doing some kids program. The kids love to see all the bees and whatnot, so it's been a lot of fun. Just a couple of shots out there. I'm just kind of cruising through here. There's our bumblebee on our sourwood tree. So I'm going to show you the website in just a minute. I'm winding down here because I want to leave time for questions. I'm going to probably skip over the seeded habitat buffers because I really want to leave time for questions. This is the work David Orr is doing. I know y'all will have access to this PowerPoint, so I don't feel too bad about skipping over this section. But basically, he's chosen about 10 different species of flowers and a couple of grass species, and they're seeded. And they're seeded in May, and they're managed. You have to mow them. There's no these are North Carolina prairie plants, and there's no irrigation and no fertilization. And so you can learn more about that by looking at the PowerPoint. So this is what I'm going to just very quickly show you a little bit on the website. Here we are. We're going to look at it now. I think I have to go up here. Okay, hang on. Because this is something y'all can look at later. Make sure I don't have any typos there. Okay, so we're now, actually on the website. Can y'all see that okay? Hopefully you can. So this is the main website, and I'm just gonna. There's a lot of resources on here. There's let's first look at. This is the website for the garden, the demonstration garden at Chatham Mills.
Hang on just a second, Debbie. Are the rest of you seeing the website?
Check. I'm seeing a check.
Great.
I'm seeing a yes. I think so. Okay, so here, I'm just going to very quickly, y'all can look at this on your own time. Background on the project. This is kind of the fun part, the what's in bloom. So every week, I've gotten a little slack the last couple of weeks, maybe every other week. You see what's blooming that week. Oh, here's a picture of that hummingbird moth at rest. So then it'll just go down through the list, and it'll have the Latin name, the common name, and I put, if it's not native to the Piedmont, North Carolina, I put where it's native to. So you can see there's about 50 different plants blooming out there right now. So it's pretty amazing the variety that's out there. But I know I'm showing this really fast, but y'all can look at that later. Okay. So that's what's in bloom. This has got the garden installation. Okay, so here's a list of the plants. So this is currently a PDF. Eventually, this is not going to be PDF, and each plant's going to have its own page with lots of photos. I've got the photos. I just wish I could take a sabbatical. Don't we wish agents could take sabbaticals? Well, I bet y'all would probably agree with me on that, so that I could get this done. But anyway, it's grouped by perennial flowers. It's different pages. There's about 100 different plants out there, perennial herbs, vines, and the trees and shrubs, and the grasses. So that's that list of plants. And I've got all the nurseries listed where we get the plants, so that's been very helpful to those local nurseries. And then just the National Pollinator Week pictures. Just very quickly, I'm going to go back to the guide. So here's web resources for pollinator conservation. So there's a lot of great links on here, lots of incredible resources out there that I encourage y'all to look at. Info on native bees. Here's how to make, here's the habitat nesting sites. So here's information on nesting sites. Supporting just all kinds of stuff out there. It's amazing what's out there. Here's another list of native plants. That other list I showed you was just the plants that are out at Chatham Marketplace. This is kind of the master list for this area. And I'm constantly adding it, although it's pretty stable. I've had people, I had a visitor early this year. I was very proud to host the National Pollinator Outreach Coordinator for the Xerces Society. So he came to the garden and actually took them around to several farms they were in town to train NRCS personnel. And he vetted my list, and he gave feedback on it, so that was very helpful. So then again, just resource list. So this gives books, and it gives resources like and also beekeeping supplies, supplies for artificial nests, all that good stuff. Okay. Whew. Okay. So I really want to leave time for questions. I think that's it as far as the just my overall site, growingsmallfarms.org. And then I'm sorry I did kind of go long, but I certainly have time for questions if people have them.
So ask away.
Y'all are awfully quiet out there.
Debbie, I had a question. This is Taylor. I had a question about some of David Orr, some of your work with David Orr and such. I'm just wondering if we've seen enough. If we've seen enough to know that there are ways that you can encourage beneficial insects. How long is this taking? And what are the benefits to say natural insect control?
Right, that's a good question. So if any of y'all have ever talked to David Orr, he takes a fairly conservative approach, which I think is good, meaning that there are a lot of people out there who are saying, oh, if you just plant this and this, you'll attract these beneficials and your problems will be solved. Well, David's take on this has always been, we've got to have research on this. You can plant flowers. They can attract beneficials. They can also attract pests, or the beneficials may be so attracted to those forage plants that they never leave them. They become a resource sink, or they may. So there's all these stages you have to go through, with the end impact being, did it actually reduce the economic impacts of that pest on the crop? So he's been focusing his research on. I think he's going to keep doing that, but his research has been on these seeded buffers, and he's doing quite a bit of it, and he is certainly monitoring those beneficial populations. So we're going to have to get him to come in. I'm not going to try to speak on his research, but I think that would be a very good talk for this session. I'm trying to cover some of these. Obtain a copy of the PowerPoint. That's going to be posted. Oh, let's see. Arrange a tour. If y'all can contact me for a tour, I do a monthly tour. The information is on the website. I'm doing one tomorrow at 5:30. It's usually the third Wednesday of the month. I also do tours, for special groups. Paper wasps, good pollinators. Generally, wasps are not considered very good pollinators. They certainly may get some pollen on them. They're not hairy. They're more, they're predators. They certainly do get, go for nectar, but they're considered definitely beneficial because they're carnivores. But no, they're not considered effective pollinators in general. But I encourage y'all. There's tremendous public interest in pollinator gardens. I can tell you that, and so I think that would be a good program for you guys. To do this kind of work, and you can start small. And just kind of go from there. Work with your beekeepers, because beekeepers obviously there's a lot of interest among them. They want to know, what can I plant to help my bees, for example. That's what this kind of sprang out of, and then it kind of quickly grew from honey plants to bee plants. I became very interested in native bee conservation through working with honeybees. But yeah, the PowerPoint will be posted on the agent site, as Lucy said. Well, thanks. I appreciate it, guys. I hope that was helpful. I encourage you to look at the website when you get a chance.
Debbie, thank you very much. Okay. Next up on our agenda is Dave Stephens from the Plant Disease and Insect Clinic, talking about current issues with insects. David, take it away.
Okay, I think we're on now. I want to say thank you, Debbie. That was an incredible presentation. I thought I knew a lot of stuff about pollinators and all, but I learned a great deal this morning. One thing I'd like to add, and Steve Bambera, I assume you're out there listening, comment on this, back me up, or shoot me down. As far as extrafloral nectaries go, I think that in a lot of cases, if not most cases, the function of those is not to attract the pollinators so much as it is to attract ants. And then the ants very aggressively will defend the plants on which the nectaries occur, because they're defending a food source, and that tends to keep pests of those plants, caterpillars and beetles and other things that might cause damage to the plants, keep them away. But it's a complicated subject, and I'm sure there are many relationships going on out there with these extrafloral nectaries that I don't know about. But Steve, if I'm looking, I don't see anything up there now, but
okay, I'll jump in here.
All right.
Basically what you were saying I think is true, but there are some settings sometimes where the bees, for instance, just take great advantage of it. So I don't know, like honeybees and cotton has extrafloral nectaries even, and they will visit that. But probably in general it's more of an ant thing than a pollinator thing. But I don't even know, I don't know either. You may have things like some of these beneficial micro wasps that could be taking advantage of it. Who knows? Lots of unknowns. That's it.
Okay, David, back to you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I didn't realize my microphone was off. Just something else occurred to me that some of the bees, some of the wasps that could prey on caterpillars and other things might be coming to the plants to get the nectaries and would feed on insects there. And also, if the nectaries were functioning before those plants started to bloom, they could condition bees to start coming to those plants even before the blooms were open, and therefore they get a jump start when they finally do bloom. Another thing I'd like to comment on, when Sean was talking about the red imported fire ant earlier, we had a lot of fire ants here on campus, and I was seeing them around my neighborhood last year, but this year there were virtually none. And I talked to one of the people involved with pest control here on campus, and he said they hadn't done anything in particular to control them. And certainly it wouldn't be everybody in my neighborhood coordinated doing the control. And I'm trying to speculate as to what might have happened to them this year, and the only thing that I can think of that would have a broad effect like that over such a wide area was that prolonged cold spell we had back in, I think, February. Not that it got intensely cold, but it was so consistently cold that it might have prevented the fire ants from doing some of the foraging they would normally do on warm winter days. And I was wondering, did anybody else, especially in the more western or northern parts of the range of the fire ant here in North Carolina, did anybody else notice a lessening or fewer mounds, less activity this year than in previous years? Okay, Debbie says she saw very few fire ants this year. Okay. Ann Edwards, none here on the coast after a huge last year. Okay, so this is a widespread phenomenon. The fire ants seem to have taken it pretty hard. In the past month, I've seen a few mounds starting to come back here on campus, but nothing like they were last year. So it may be that the weather had something to do with it. Let's see, what happens after rain? Yeah, we haven't had much of that lately. Okay, let me get started here. I didn't have a lot to talk about this morning, but the first thing I want to go into, talk about sawflies a little bit. Getting into this particular species of sawflies after a few slides. But sawflies, probably most of you have heard of them, maybe don't know as much about them. They're kind of a wasp. They're not very wasp-like in appearance. They look, in some cases, more like flies or maybe even beetles than they do like wasps. But in place of a stinger, and the stinger is just a modified ovipositor, a structure for laying eggs in a substrate, they have this serrated saw-like structure which they use to cut holes into foliage or into stems of plants, sometimes even into wood, in which they lay their eggs. In this plant, this is some sweet potato here.
You're not going to see that unless you click on the magic wand there.
I'm sorry, where's the magic wand?
Next to the S in sawflies. Down. Little left. Here. Right there.
All right. Sorry, I'm putzing around here until Mike gets me figured out. Okay. All right, these strips, these spots here in the sweet potato leaf, these are individual oviposition sites, a single egg in each one, where a sweet potato whitefly has laid its eggs. The larvae Most species of sawflies feed externally on plant foliage. Some of them are leaf miners, and some of them are borers, either in the stems of plants, possibly the roots, certainly in the wood of plants. Those species which feed externally on the foliage look much like the caterpillars of butterflies and moths, while those that are borers look kind of like the borers of, say, longhorn beetles or the breasted wood borers in the wood. There are modifications they have for boring in wood. So those borers are essentially legless and usually whitish in color. A great many species of sawflies are pests, especially of trees. There are many forestry pests among sawflies. Some species also feed on herbaceous ornamentals. There's a few that are pests in grain crops like wheat, feed on fruit trees, and even some on vegetables. There are a number of species of sawflies, and here in the U.S. and Canada and north of Mexico, there's about 12 families altogether. Okay, this particular group, the Argid sawflies, family Argidae, it's a group most people have heard very little about because relatively few of them are of economic importance. It's a medium-sized group here in the United States, about 8 genera and 60 species occurring north of Mexico, but a much more diverse group in the tropics. I had good fortune to spend a couple of weeks in Trinidad and Tobago many years ago, and we found a number of Argid sawflies in bromeliads on limbs of trees. We were looking for frogs and lizards in the bromeliads, and we found a lot more of the Argid sawflies than we did of the frogs and lizards. But hey, you know, they're critters, and I'll take them where I can get them. As I said, relatively few Argid sawflies are pests of cultivated plants here in North Carolina, and in most cases their presence is very spotty in distribution. But where you do get them, they may be quite heavy. Probably the most familiar Argid sawfly here in North Carolina is one that feeds on hibiscus, especially the large-leafed, soft foliage, tropical type hibiscus that people sometimes grow outdoors. There's a species that will cause heavy damage to that one. But this one, the sweet potato sawfly, and the reason I have that in quotes is that the Entomological Society of America maintains a standardized list of common names, and this species doesn't actually have an assigned common name, but we can call it the sweet potato sawfly. And it feeds exclusively on the foliage of Ipomea species, the sweet potato and the morning glory. Although this species is widely distributed in the eastern United States, it is not a major pest of sweet potato in North Carolina. And in fact, I think this was the very first sample of this pest I'd ever seen come in. It was brought in just last week by Mark Abney. It was found in a field down in Sampson County, and the grower reported finding them in that field the previous year. But Mark's been working with sweet potato for quite a while here in North Carolina, and this may have been the first time he ever encountered this particular pest as well. So we're not sure why, whether it had something to do with the cultivar of the sweet potato or some other local feature in the landscape that allowed it to build up in numbers like that, I can't say. But one of the features of Argid sawflies is that they frequently have their seeding on their body on these little conical warts, which gives them a distinctive appearance even to the naked eye. The sawfly, when they're mature, they spin a cocoon. Usually it's a somewhat papery cocoon. This one looks a little fuzzy on the outside. The cocoon may be spun right up on the foliage, such as in the case with some of the conifer sawflies, like the red-headed pine sawfly, for example, spins cocoon right up in foliage. Others may come down to the ground and spin their cocoon either in the litter on the ground or in the soil itself. There are certain species that even actually have to bore into wood. They have this like psychological need to chew their way into wood before they'll pupate. The last larval stage of the sawfly molts to a non-feeding prepupal larva, which then proceeds to spin the cocoon. Seems like a big waste of energy, but a lot of sawflies do that, and so it must work for them. I have a question here. How many generations per year do sawflies typically have? Some species, like the hibiscus sawfly, may have several generations per year, and then there are probably some others, especially some of the wood borers that take a long time to complete their development, that are only going to have a single generation a year. And I would imagine that in the northern parts of the North America, especially some of the wood borers, might take even 2 or even more years to complete the development. But typically tropical species like the hibiscus sawfly or this sweet potato sawfly will probably have as many generations per year as they can squeeze in. All right, praying mantids. This is a group of insects that most people have heard of and recognize. One of the most, say, easily recognized and probably well-tolerated groups of insects in the world. Now, the mantids used to be part of the order Orthoptera, which includes the crickets and katydids and grasshoppers and a few other obscure groups. But several of those, including the cockroaches, the walking sticks, and a few rather obscure groups that nobody else has ever heard of, have been split off and made into orders of their own now. So the mantids are in the order Mantodia, is the name for them. Altogether, there's about 8 families of mantids, and probably 1,500 to 2,000 species of mantids throughout the world. They're most abundant in the tropics, and then their diversity and numbers decrease rapidly the farther north you go. Here in North Carolina, there are 2 families of mantids and about 5 species. Altogether, there are 16 species in the United States. Now, when I grew up in New York State as a kid, well, we didn't have any mantids that were native that far north, but we did have one species, the European mantid, which was common around the fields where I grew up as a kid. Probably now the Chinese mantid has spread into the area, and I went back there now, and I could probably find some of them. Most species of mantids seem to be well camouflaged for hiding in or among vegetation, but there are some desert species, for example, which are camouflaged for living on rocks or gravelly soils. They're usually wingless, they can run rather fast, and they blend in very well. Let's see, I have a question here. How can we get more info on species of mantids present in North Carolina? Actually, I'm going to go into that on the next couple of slides here. Okay. Well, this species, this specimen pictured here is the Carolina mantid. It is one of 2 species of mantids that are native to North Carolina, and there are 3 other species that have been introduced to the United States and are present in North Carolina. The Carolina mantid is the more common, or well, maybe not the more common, but certainly the more familiar of our native species, because it frequently will fly to lights, or it can be found crawling around on vegetation in gardens and fields. The other species, the Brunner's mantid, also known as the walking stick mantid, Bruneria borealis, is very well camouflaged. It's shaped more like a walking stick than it is like a mantid. Very slender bodied. It's wingless, so they can't fly. And equally strange, it is also present only as females. It's a parthenogenetic species. There are no males. So every individual, when it matures, is capable of laying eggs. Yeah, it's sometimes fairly common, especially among broom sedge fields, thick grasses, but because it's so well camouflaged, it's hard to spot unless you're deliberately looking for it. Mantids lay their eggs in the fall of the year. They produce from a soft, frothy ootheca, which then quickly hardens into a dense foam-like material. Start laying eggs probably within a few weeks after they mature, after females get enough, eat enough insects to develop their energy reserves. And the eggs begin to hatch in April in the eastern part of North Carolina. The adults start appearing by late August or into early September, and they may live for another 2 or 3 months until cold weather finally catches up with them. Among mantids, males are smaller and much more slender-bodied than the females. This is a male here. This one can fly very well. They will sometimes come to lights at night. The males of our other species can fly well too. I'm not sure how well the females can fly, but probably not really well. In the in the fall of the year, when the females begin to lay their eggs, each ootheca may contain anywhere from say 150 to 250, possibly 300 eggs, depending on how well nourished the female is. One time I raised a batch of baby Chinese mantids from eggs and kept them in the lab and kept them well fed, first with fruit flies I got from a genetics lab here, and then house flies from one of our labs upstairs in entomology. And then as they got older and unfortunately became fewer as they ate each other among other things, I ended up with about 3 adults. One of them was a female, and she mated, and then I thought, well, I'm just going to see how long I can keep her and how many eggs she will lay. And I kept her fed to the max, giving her as much food as she could possibly eat. And every 10 or 11 days, like clockwork, she produced another Eupatorium until she had produced 7. And then she finally just burned out sometime in late November, early December, whenever it was, finally wore out. But the potential is there for a female to lay several Eupatorium if she's well nourished. Many people have heard about how the female eats the male during mating. This frequently happens, but occasionally males survive the process and may even go on to mate again another day. Manads hunt by sight, and they have a very good eyesight, and they quickly pick up on movements that are going around them. If there's a cricket or something sitting right in front of them, if it isn't moving, they may not even recognize it as prey at all. They don't seem to use olfactory senses to pick up on prey. Their very widely separated eyes probably help them to triangulate the distance from the prey. Also, if you keep a manatee as a pet and you offer it something, you may notice that it kind of rocks back and forth a little bit as it's stalking its prey, and that helps also to gauge the distance. This particular one seemed to be very attracted to the camera, and it was repeatedly jumping at the camera and flying there. Mike Munster, though, brave soul that he is, stood his ground and let the manatees constantly attack him. And looking at Mike now, and the scratches and cuts are healing very nicely. They didn't even require any sutures, and he will recover completely from his experience. The most common of our introduced species of manatees is the Chinese manatee, and this individual is also a male. And I found this one on campus a few weeks ago. Early one morning, a cardinal was attacking it, trying to subdue it, and the mantis was in full defensive mode with wings flared and front legs out to the side, trying to present a very impressive picture, and it was doing a good job of it. The cardinal probably would have won eventually, but after watching it for a minute, I decided to rescue it because I knew we had this PPP coming up, and I needed to get some good images. So. This one is nearly 4 inches long. A female can reach 4.5, 5 inches long, and probably be half again as heavy as a male. 2 other species are present here in North Carolina, 2 introduced species. One, the narrow-winged mantis, Tenedera angustipennis, similar to the Chinese manatee, a little smaller, and body proportions are a little bit different. And also recently the European manatee, which has been present in New York, well, the Northeast for probably over 100 years, has recently been detected and photographed in North Carolina. All 3 came in by accident. Presumably they came in as Eupatorium on plants through the nursery trade, although we don't know for sure. And I know that people sell the Eupatorium probably mostly of the Chinese manatee. They tout it as a good biocontrol. Let's see. Oh, the scratches on my arm, yes. That has nothing to do with the mantis. So that was where I was actually reaching through some bramble bushes trying to prune out some invasive bamboo along one of the greenway trails here in Raleigh. Don't get me started on bamboo and other invasive plants, because those of you who know me know that I'll get on a soapbox about that. But the manatee did not inflict those wounds on me. Manatees are often praised as beneficial predators of pests, but the fact of the matter is that they really aren't all that effective. They're generalist predators. They'll eat just about anything they encounter that's in the right size range, whether it's a pest or a beneficial like a honeybee. And sometimes manatees are known to position themselves near honeybee colonies and pick off the worker bees. They have no compunctions against doing that. However, as ambassadors for the whole practice and idea of biocontrol, manatees are very good because people can relate to manatees. They're big, they're showy, I'm sorry, I lost the word I'm thinking of here. But you can't explain, tiny little parasitoid wasps that are only a fraction of a millimeter long to people. They don't get that. Manatees they get. So even though they're not very effective, they're good for telling people about biocontrol. Now, fortunately, these introduced species of manatees do not seem to have displaced our native species, and you can find them living more or less alongside each other. Question here, do Chinese manatees and native manatees occupy different habitats? Yes, there has been some research done on that, and I don't have off the top of my head the details, But in general, old field habitats that contain a mixture of grasses and herbaceous plants and maybe some shrubs or small trees are going to have the greatest diversity of prey in the form of grasshoppers and crickets and katydids, and those are certainly going to be excellent places for manads. Some manads may prefer living up in trees as opposed to living in more open herbaceous grassy habitats. Some may prefer wetter areas or drier areas. The information is out there. I'm sorry I didn't have time to look that up prior to this presentation. This specimen also seemed to be very interested in the camera and kept attacking the camera as well. Now, manads can bite, and I remember as a kid I was a little afraid of manads because they're big, they're scary looking, they've got those enormous raptorial front legs there, and if you were to just grab a mantis carelessly, yes, it would probably turn and try to bite. But if you let a manid, or just about any arthropod really, run around openly in your hand without restraining it, they will behave themselves and not bite you. So Mike survived the encounter with this one too, even though it kept attacking him. Yes, somebody asked about praying mantis eating hummingbird. This has been documented. Chinese manads are our largest species of manid here in North Carolina in terms of weight, even though the walking stick mantis may reach a bit greater length. They have been observed on occasion eating lizards, and it's been documented in rare occasions they can capture something the size of a hummingbird and kill it, but this is certainly not the norm. The vast majority of their prey is going to be other arthropods, including spiders. Okay, moving along a little bit, the subject of galls, as most of you know, is near and dear to my heart. This particular gall, the linden wart gall midge, Contarinea versicola. This was a sample that's submitted as an image, not any physical foliage that came in. It came in last month from Jackson County, and it was on a species of linden or basswood, the genus Tilia. This is the first time we had ever gotten a report of this gall in North Carolina, here in the Plant Disease and Insect Clinic. It's a native species of midge, indigenous to our northeastern United States and southern Canada. It's been reported from as far west as Missouri, I believe, and previously as far south as Virginia or West Virginia. I don't know if it had ever been recorded in North Carolina. It's maybe a first record for us as well. Now, basswoods, the Tilia, there are about 4 species that are native to North Carolina, but you encounter them more frequently in the wild and also as cultivated trees in our mountains and also northwards in the U.S. Sometimes you see them planted in central and eastern North Carolina, but not as often. And it's a group that we just don't know much about the diseases and pests of because we don't get them in very often. This is a close-up of the galls, and here you can see some old galls from which the midges have already emerged, and here are some younger galls that are still in the process of developing. This is a leafhopper nymph here, and we're going to ignore him for the time being. The literature I have on this species indicates that it has 1 generation a year. It's univoltine in the northeastern states, but the fact that you've got galls obviously of quite different ages suggests that it may have more than 1 generation here in the southernmost part of its range. We simply don't know. Like I say, this is the first record we've ever seen of this particular gall. Now, about galls in general, the adults of many gall-making insects have never been reared. The galls are known only from the gall itself, and of course the host plant, and in some cases from the larvae within the gall. When a rather large publication on gall midges came out about 20 years ago, that's where I got my information on this gall. And as of that time, the adult fly of this gall midge was still unknown. The gall was familiar, but nobody had ever been able to rear the adult. So the identification of Contarinea versicola is based primarily on the structure of the larva. Also on that same sample, or images of that same sample, we got this interesting example of a skeletonizing injury on the basswood leaf. And we don't know what this is from its appearance. I'm guessing that it's one of the flea beetles or some other kind of leaf beetle, but there was no mention of beetles or other chewing insects in reference that came the information with this sample, and there were none visible in the image itself. A close-up or another shot of the same sample shows how extensive the feeding injury is. Now, I'm going to ask, especially some of you in the western part of the state, does anybody out there ever encounter basswood linden trees, and have you seen any kind of insect injury on them that was similar to this? This particular image also shows well-developed leaf mite of some sort, but again, I don't know what it is. I checked our records. I have very few insect records, and this going back 40 years, of any insects on basswood linden. A few of them are lace bugs, and there are a few caterpillars, but nothing like this. And since we've started keeping records in our new database almost 3 years ago, this was the first sample of basswood that we've had come in. So since we rarely get these samples, we know, as I said, here we know very little about the diseases and insects that are on them. Okay, I had a question from Taylor Williams. Could insect pupate in the ground after autumn leaf fall? Has an attempt made to really? Yes. Many, if not most, of the gall midges on all kinds of plants, all species of gall midges on all plants, the larvae drop into the soil. The one that gets on red maple early in the spring, for example, the larvae drops into the soil, and they spend 2 years in the soil before it emerges as an adult. Very few of the gall midge larvae that I'm familiar with pupate within the gall itself, unlike most of the gall wasps on oaks where they do pupate within the gall. So the larvae would drop to the soil, and you would have to either try to put some kind of rearing cage on the ground under the tree, or collect the galls while they're still growing and enclose them with a container of soil so the larvae could burrow in there and pupate. But rearing some of these things in captivity is proved to be problematic. All right, moving along here because I'm running out of time. I've got green stripe maple worm, most commonly encountered on red maple here in North Carolina, but it does feed on other maples, and there's even a few reports of it feeding on oak. It's a close relative of our oak worms belonging to the genus Anisota. We have 4 of those in North Carolina. Structurally, it's similar to the oak worms, but very different in color. Like the oak worms, and also like their larger relatives like the hickory horned devil and the imperial moth, they do not spin a cocoon, but when the larva is full grown, it drops down from the tree or crawls down the trunk and burrows into the soil to hollow out a cell. There's only 1 generation a year for this species in the Northeast, but there are reported in the South 2 generations a year for this species. The female oakworms lay their eggs, well, oakworm and mapleworm lay their eggs in large clusters. They deposit most of their eggs in maybe just 1 or 2 clusters rather than scattering over a large number of trees. And the larvae stay together throughout most of their life. So you can get 1 individual tree that's heavily defoliated while the vast majority of other maple trees around them have no damage whatsoever. Control usually isn't necessary because they are seldom a serious problem on trees, but any of the standard caterpillar insecticides should work, and especially if it's a tree or, say, in the crown of a large mature tree where it's not practical to try and reach them, it's best to just ignore them because they're not going to seriously harm the tree. My last slide here, saved the most beautiful looking critter for last. This is the again, I put it in quotes because it's not an official common name, the milkweed tussock moth. Now, this is a species that I used to see on common milkweed up in the Northeast, New York State when I was a kid. It's a very distinctive caterpillar. You can recognize it at a glance. It belongs to the tiger moth family, the family Arctiidae, which includes a number of beautiful moths as well as beautiful caterpillars. It is host-specific to milkweed, Asclepias species. So only people like wildflower gardeners and bee gardeners need to be concerned about this. It's not going to feed on any other kind of ornamental or any kind of crop. And it occurs generally throughout the eastern half of the U.S. from Canada to Florida. Like many other insects that feed on milkweeds, this insect uses the toxins in the milkweed sap, which are cardenolide alkaloids. I've also seen them referred to as cardiac glyphosides that are in the plant sap. And the whole subject of how various kinds of insects utilize the toxins and alkaloids in plant sap for their own personal protection could be another whole subject discussion in itself. Now, this species doesn't sting, even though you might suspect it's a stinging caterpillar, but it is highly toxic to vertebrate predators like birds and frogs and lizards. But of course, in nature, if there is a food resource out there, something will find a way to eat it, and there are certain predators and parasitoids that would attack this caterpillar. So I'm going to stop and ask if there are any question is this. Lucy makes a comment, David, is it unwise to touch any caterpillar? Any clues when it is okay to touch? No, not really. You have to learn the individual caterpillars one by one. There are really not any common clues as to which ones are harmless and which ones are not. But in general, when you see a caterpillar like this that is boldly colored and does not attempt to hide itself in any way, has strong contrasting colors, that's a warning that it may be a stinging or poisonous caterpillar because it's not trying to camouflage itself. It's almost like it's trying to advertise its presence, make itself known.
Okay, someone has their hand raised here.
Okay, well, how do I click now?
Okay, I know. I just go to.
All right.
Hi, this is Cindy Lauderdale. Can you hear me, Dave?
You turn your mic back on, Dave.
Okay, it's back on now.
Okay. I heard last week that fipronil is no longer allowed to be used by homeowners for fire ant control. Can you tell me if that is true and how long that's been in effect?
Ask Steve Bambera that question because he knows more about the pesticides than I do.
Okay, Cindy, can you hear me? Well, all right, I'll just talk here. And this question apparently did come out with the master gardeners, and to my knowledge, that the wholesale discontinuation of that is not the case. Now, fipronil is in the homeowner formulation of Over and Out, which is a fire ant insecticide. It's also in a few agricultural products, and some of these products are going to be withdrawn, and I think it's actually voluntary. So, as to my knowledge, the date that I have on the Over and Out is that it will be taken off the market May 15th of 2011. So that's a coming up thing. It's not a wholesale removal of fipronil, and the commercial products, Top Choice, for example, in the landscape that does contain fipronil will still be available. So I think it's just selected few homeowner pesticides that are going to, with fipronil, that will be withdrawn, not a wholesale removal of the product.
Okay, so you asking why?
Your question. The suggestion is, without getting into why, I guess just to reduce the exposure to the homeowner or consumer market. One other thing that somebody said, and I don't know what this goes into the rumor category, that initially, anyway, a lot of the commercial landscapers were buying the homeowner formulations of it and using it, etc., and maybe that was creating some financial stress, or I don't know. I think in general, I think they're just trying to reduce the amount of homeowners that are using it. Not that you can't use it on a home lawn, but just the homeowner exposure. So we have a lot of things that are, once it gets into the homeowner market, homeowners go crazy with it. Not any of us, I know, or any of those people who have attended any of these sessions. But the consumers just will buy it and spread it everywhere in the world. So this is, I think, just an effort to reduce the use of it. Maybe it will also reduce potential resistance to the product, since it's so effective and great in many cases. All right?
Steve, the comment was made by an entomologist from South Carolina. Do those regulations vary by state? So, and that might explain his comments?
No, well, there could be some, and that's possible. I did, in fact, after hearing this question, go to our list, North Carolina list of registered pesticides, and it is still registered, and there's no indication that it's going to be withdrawn. I could check into the South Carolina aspect of that, but, well, I can't speak for South Carolina. I can just tell you for sure what it is here. I can't imagine them removing fipronil overall, and EPA generally makes these recommendations, and this is a voluntary, at the moment, it's a voluntary withdrawal of some of the consumer products. I'll check into that, and if I find differently, I'll send out a message to the horde agents.
Thank you. Okay, Mike, are you ready?
Well, I think there's still a question here that they wanted to pose to Dave about this insect on the picture.
Very quickly, this image came in from Randolph County today. This is a bug feeds on cultivated hibiscus, especially Rose of Sharon, host specific to hibiscus. It doesn't have a common name, although I guess you could call it the hibiscus plant bug or something like that. Has a tongue twister scientific name. It's probably poisonous to eat, so I would avoid that, but it's harmless to touch, and it could be controlled by any of the pesticides recommended for leaf-footed bugs or stink bugs.
All right. Good to be with everyone again today. Again, what an awesome presentation, Debbie. If you could show me how to take pictures like that, then the next time the mantid photographs would turn out a little better if of course, the insects weren't quite so aggressive. I guess they look at me as some kind of tough guy in the insect world. This, in my career, is the first time that I can ever remember starting out a presentation with a government document. But I think this is interesting. The electrons aren't even dry yet on Commissioner Troxler's signature. This is last week, the external quarantine that the North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services put out on walnut trees and certain other products and a certain beetle and fungus. And I'm going to take the opportunity here to talk about why this is happening and the disease that they're concerned about. If you look in the print at the bottom of what you can see on the screen, the quarantine concerns products from or moving through these states. Mostly, you'll notice, are out in the west, but there's Tennessee. And the reason for that is, we'll get to in a second. Oops, sorry. The reason for the concern is a disease known as thousand cankers disease, and it's been since the 90s noticed in walnuts out in the west. The early crown symptoms consist of thinning and flagging of certain branches, which you could potentially confuse for drought stress. But then, as the disease progresses, it can kill the entire tree. Now, black walnut is an introduced species out in the west, but native here in the east. And the beetle that carries this disease, or carries the fungus that causes the disease, has been known for quite a few decades, but the disease itself is a relatively recent discovery. Under the conditions they're talking about in Colorado, they mention the death of trees within a year of when the symptoms are first noticed. But if you look at the NCDA's pest alert, they talk about a time period of within 3 years. The pathosystem, as we call it, consists of 3 parts here. There is the host, which are trees in the genus Juglans, including Juglans nigra, or black walnut, but also several other walnut species native to the western states. The fungus causing the disease is a species in the genus Geosmithia, and they're proposing the name Geosmithia morbida. There's a certain protocol that has to be followed before a scientific name is officially recognized, though, and that is still pending. The fungus is carried by a small beetle called the walnut twig beetle, and I'll let an entomologist try and pronounce the scientific name of that, Pithiophthorus juglandus. It's called a twig beetle, but it doesn't just feed on small twigs. It actually feeds on substantial branches, and if there's an entomologist who wants to comment more about that particular aspect, they can do that. You'll notice in the photograph here, the beetles visible and covered by spores or the mycelium of the fungus. They are extremely small, as you can see from this photograph of the exit holes where the adult beetles emerge from this branch in comparison with a penny. If you strip the bark off of an affected branch, you'll notice the cankers underneath, which because of their large numbers gives the common name of the disease, thousand cankers. The beetles are actually feeding in the phloem of the wood, but the fungus will eventually grow into the wood itself. The cankers are not going to be very noticeable on the surface, though, if you haven't peeled the bark off. Of course, with this happening to the plumbing of the tree, that branch is eventually going to die. So the problem has been around since the 90s, but why all the fuss now? What happens is that in August of 2010, this disease was first found for the first time east of the Mississippi River. That is, found for the first time in the native range of black walnut, and it was found in Knox County, Tennessee, and further surveys discovered that it was in a couple of adjacent counties, including one that just comes right up against Swain County, North Carolina, as you can see from the map. So as far as Tennessee is concerned, there is a quarantine on these counties here, but then a buffer regulated area of the adjacent counties around it. As far as the North Carolina regulation is concerned, though, it's, see if I can draw this, the entire state of Tennessee, which is considered part of the external quarantine. Surveys are going to be conducted here in North Carolina, and through the grapevine I heard that they are actually started, and as far as I know, this disease has not been found in North Carolina yet. So what should you do as master gardeners? First, of course, would be to provide clear and accurate information to your clientele. We are waiting and hoping for some first responder training materials to be coming out so that we can help you to be able to know how to recognize this and be on the lookout for it, which is, of course, the second step, to be on the alert for symptoms in walnut trees. We're very soon getting into fall, though, and as the trees start to turn color, that's going to confuse and make difficult any kind of surveys. If you do have a tree that you're suspecting they could have thousand cankers disease, right now the recommendation is to call the North Carolina Department of Agriculture Plant and Industry Division. The number is on the screen, or send them an email at the address newpest@ncagr.gov. And of course, above all, follow the quarantine. Do not move walnut trees in from out of state. Do not move wood, and nuts, though, are okay, and nut meats. You can see the quarantine order itself for exemptions. So Steve Bambera, if you need to bring in another hammer dulcimer with walnut inlay for next PPP opening music sequence, you're okay there because that's a finished product that has no bark on it. This is an example here. This is a bad idea. Someone had found a dead walnut tree and thought that would be a good idea for, could be woodworking or I'm not sure what, but the log there potentially harboring the insect and the fungus. As it turns out that even chipping the wood may not be enough, because in this example here they found that some of the larger chips or pieces were still large enough to harbor both larvae and adults of the beetle. A lot of research is going to have to go on to see how this disease and its insect vector are going to behave here in the east, and at this time there is no known treatment either for the insect or for the fungus. You'll certainly be hearing a lot more about this disease in the coming months, and as I said, there will be hopefully some materials coming out for first detectors. In the meantime, here are 3 places you can go to. First, the NCDA's site, where you'll find the quarantine order and the press release, and then a couple of pieces of information from farther west, Colorado State, and from Missouri. I myself will be hoping to learn a lot more about this next week at the Canuga meeting of plant pathologists and entomologists who are involved with ornamentals, and there are people on the program who will be talking about this disease. All right, the question here from Taylor, are other species of jungulans affected? Yes, to different degrees, but other species, Arizona walnut and the others that are farther west, I think English walnut is 2, and I'm not sure which more than others, but yes, other species of walnut are affected by the disease, and they are affected or included in the quarantine itself. Is there another question at all about the 1,000 cankers? All right, well, let me move on to a topic that isn't actually current, but it got left uncovered last time when we ran out of time. So I wanted to spend a little time talking about diseases on fruits. And let me put the question to you. If you could write here on the screen using the text tool, what different kinds of fruits have you been seeing this year that people have been bringing in with problems on them? Okay, we see peach brown rot in the text box there, pears, apples, peaches mainly. Grapes, unfortunately I'm not going to talk about grapes. Apples, tomatoes, pecans. Okay, that's good to know. Maybe we need to talk something about grapes and pecans at a future time. Okay, bitter rot, that's one that I will be talking about. So let me launch into this. So far it hasn't been mentioned, but can anybody name this blueberry disease? And I see a couple of people already have it. This is called mummyberry. It's caused by the fungus Monolinia vaccinii corymbosi, and the typical symptom is the shriveled berry that eventually takes on a sort of strange miniature pumpkin-like shape. Let me ask this question then. Once someone sees this, should fungicide sprays be started? True or false? Let's get our false quiz up here. Oops, sorry. I see people using the X's, which is actually correct. The answer is false because it would be way too late. The infection of the berries actually occurred back during the bloom period. Also, there are other strategies to control the disease that you need to take into account. But first, let's go through a little bit of the biology of the disease. Way back in the springtime, the mummies that were in the soil, but not buried, from the previous year or even from 2 years earlier, formed these small cup-shaped mushroom-like structures. We call them apothecia here, coming out of the mummyberry here. These produce spores that were then blown on the wind and infected the blueberry. But what happens at that time of year is we get leaf, twig, and flower blight going on. Now it's interesting that in the ultraviolet range of the spectrum, so what Debbie's bees would see, these blighted shoots look like blueberry flowers, and they will attract bees that then spread the spores that are produced on these shoots to the blossoms. The infected fruits, when they develop, instead of turning a nice blue, will become a cream or pink color and then shrivel up, forming the mummyberry that we recognize. So what can you do to control this disease? Well, first of all, since the mummies are what start the infections in the spring, avoid introducing those into your planting from the beginning in your planting stock. The best thing would be dormant bare-rooted material, but if you are buying blueberries in containers, make sure you shake off the surface of the potting mix there so that you don't bring mummies into your garden. If you do have them, either rake them up or bury them so that they can't produce infections for the following year. Here in the Piedmont, you can plant rabbit-eye blueberries. For some reason, the rabbit-eye will not get the fruit infection. At least it hasn't been found in North Carolina. Elsewhere it has. And for the homeowner, the biological fungicide Serenade, which is a bacillus species, can be used, and according to Bill Klein, has good activity against this disease. Just to mention in passing that for other blueberry fruit rots, there are no fungicides needed. The trick is timely and complete harvesting. So every 10 days or so, make sure that you've got all the ripe fruit picked off the bushes so that the fruit rots do not spread. Shifting now to peaches, the same question. True or false, fungicide sprays to the developing peaches would reduce the losses to this disease? I see some people putting in the text box true and true, and a couple of checks on the check boxes there. Let's look at the polling results. And as it happens, the ayes have it. This is true, and the fruit become more susceptible actually as they ripen. This, of course, is brown rot of stone fruit. It's the most important disease of stone fruit worldwide. I used to see it even in Aguascalientes, Mexico, when I lived there. The fungus that causes it is called Monolinia fruticola, and you may see this spelled Molinia, but that's just a name for a different phase of the fungus. The two different phases have different names, but it really is the same thing, so you may want to Google it both ways. This actually turns out to be a disease you could potentially diagnose via the internet. Now here what happens is there's a blossom and twig blight phase that occurs during the spring. And from here, it will do two sinister things. One, it will produce the spores that will infect this year's fruit, and also it will, on these twigs, survive the winter to start the cycle again in the spring. And another way that it can survive the winter would be on these mummies, or the shriveled up fruit that never developed. The disease cycle is a little bit different from that of mummyberry and blueberry, but we don't need to get into details. For brown rot, on a small scale, if you only have a few trees and you can be pruning out the mummies and the dead twigs, sanitation is practical. Or if you have some, next to your orchard, you may have some prunus species growing wild that you can remove and keep away from the area. Those would be helpful strategies, but really the main line of defense here are the fungicides. Myclobutanil is a good choice for the homeowner, sold as Immunox, and I'm going to really leave most of the fungicide commentaries because there's a new revision of our home disease, or home orchard disease and insect guide that will be coming out hopefully soon, that will have the detailed recommendations for insect and disease sprays.
Mike, you got a question in the chat box?
Along with brown rot, is there a way of controlling bacterial speck or spot of peaches? That is a difficult question because of the fact that pretty much what we've got for controlling bacterial diseases is copper, and copper can cause phytotoxicity to peaches and burns of leaves. So That I'm not sure that there is a good answer to that, but I will certainly try and find that out. Jumping ahead on me there. All right, the other main disease on the homeowner peach tree is going to be peach scab. And the symptom here, let me see if I've got a, here the initial symptoms are very small spots, and this is a little bit different from the previous disease where you're mostly concerned about the infections in the ripening fruit. These are, for this disease, the most important period for infection is that first month after shuck split. And if you get enough lesions on the surface of these, then the skin of the fruit won't be able to expand like the interior, and you'll get cracking, as you can see here. For peach scab, you want to do what you can to reduce the amount of moisture that's going to be present on the fruits. So don't plant in low sites. Keep your pruning so that you've got good airflow through the canopy, and maintain your fungicide spray program. And of course, be sure to observe your pre-harvest interval for these sprays. Captan has been something that's been used against this, and as far as I've been able to tell, it is still registered and could be used by homeowners, but I'm going to hold off commenting on that until the new fruit note comes out. Also, sulfur is not as effective, but it has some activity against both the peach scab and brown rot. You may have heard too that chlorothalonil can be used, but that has to be done at an early stage. After shuck split, you can't use that on peaches. Right. The two main diseases of apple in the home orchard, which may be different from what the most important diseases in the commercial orchard are, will be bitter rot and black rot, caused by two different fungi, Calototricum in the one case and Bactrosphaeria in the other. And if you were to cut open a bitter rot lesion, you would notice that it actually does go down into the flesh of the fruit itself in a sort of a V shape. And that's characteristic or diagnostic of at least the later stage lesions of bitter rot. Black rot, that particular fungus, is the same one that causes frog eye leaf spot. And in the case shown here, this may have been an infection that occurred on a sepal. It can occur very early in the development of the flower, and it then can infect the fruit from there. Please be aware that the diseases called bitter rot and black rot in apple are not caused by the same fungi that cause diseases of those names in grape. And of course, your apple fruit rot program should include, a control program should include pruning out any dead branches or mummified fruit, and also any twigs that had fire blight on them, either old or new from this year. The reason for that is these fungi can invade the tissue that's already been killed by fire blight and then produce spores to cause fruit infections. Don't leave mummified fruit or pruned branches on the ground either. Keep fruit removed from the tree as soon as you notice it, the infected fruit, and of course follow your fungicide spray program.
Mike, you have a question about organic control?
Well, sulfur would be one of the ones that would be available, and again, it wouldn't have as much activity as some of the conventional fungicides or the synthetic fungicides. As far as whether serenade would work for some of these others, which is of course biological, that I do not know. So I'm going to have to again beg off on that one, and we'll look into it for you for next time. Right? Any other questions? Right. Thank you very much, and turn it back over to Lucy for the wrap-up.
Great. Thank you, Mike. Just want to share with you a couple of things that are coming up on the schedule, and two new places for you to check for things on the schedule. We've created two new interactive calendars. Let me just show you really quick. There's one here on the urban horticulture site, and what I've done is set it so that you can choose. If you look at, if you look at the arrow just on the right of where it says agenda, you can choose whether you want to see statewide events. Well, shoot, that's not. Huh. Okay. What's happening is it's not showing all here through Illuminate, but if you go to this site, you can pick by coastal plains, Piedmont, or mountain, so you can check which parts of those you want to look at. You can look at the calendar as a monthly view or weekly view, or as an agenda, so you can just see what's coming up. If you have items that you want to put on the public site, let me know, and I can set you up to be able to post those. There's also one on the community gardening page. They're under events, and if you look here, they are showing up. So you can say, I only want to see things that are happening in the mountains, so take out the Piedmont and the coastal plains, and then you aren't cluttered with things that you're not interested in. If you go to the agenda view, you can see things that are happening further down. And we're just starting to populate the site. But anyway, it's a place where people can get information about gardening events statewide. I think it can help all of us as we're planning to know what else is going on, and to be able to share information. So these are some of the things that are on there. The Urban Forestry Conference is going on right now here in Raleigh. Tomorrow is the last of the Southern Region IPM webinar series, so I hope you'll join us for that. Garden Conservancy is coming up here in Raleigh and in Charlotte not long after. The Triangle Farm Tour, Urban Trees, anyway, I won't read them all to you, but just so as you got on your calendar, our next Plants, Pests, and Pathogens will be on the 9th of November. And just a reminder to check in UNC TV for both Almanac Gardener and In the Garden with Bryce Lane is happening this time of year. Any other questions that anybody has, or anything that you want to share? All right, thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you in November. All right.